Hello everyone. Unfortunately I got COVID, so I've been quite ill for a few days, but I'm recovering now. I'm still not fully well, but I'm getting there. But I have to isolate for another few days either way. So you might remember I got given a longboard. Eventually what I'll probably end up doing with it is taking the trucks and wheels off, using them for something, maybe reshaping the deck and reusing that. So I'm going to start the process of making that cruiser board out of that longboard today. This is something I've done a fair few times with skateboards, a couple of times with longboards. There's a couple of them right here actually. I actually didn't place them there for that reason. That's just where they live. So this one's made out of an old welcome deck. Got drop through, reverse kingpin longboard trucks, big old orangutan wheels. It's really fast, to be honest with you. This thing is really pretty fast. It's great for cruising around, going to the shops on and stuff like that, going down hills, getting to skate spots, getting to the skate park. Unlike a longboard, it's not big and unwieldy when you get there. Also, I guess the real difference between a cruiser and a longboard, you might just say a longboard is long, but there's a little bit more to it than that. I mean, this one for example is using regular conventional kingpin trucks, but they did come off of a longboard. They're a lot bigger than your average skateboard trucks. They're not really made for doing tricks and stuff, to be honest with you. They are made for cruising. It's got longboard wheels on it. They even say mindless longboards on it right there. They literally came off of a longboard. These came off of a longboard, not the same one. The deck though on this one is made out of a regular skateboard deck, popsicle shape. It was a polar deck. My girlfriend painted this beautiful artwork on here, hand painted. So obviously I'm not going to do any board slides on it or anything like that. Top graphics, the original top graphic from the board. She did a great job working the right sort of colours in so that it looks like it should just be like this from the factory. So the difference is really between a cruiser board and a longboard. I don't think it's just the size, because I've ridden a couple longboards that were actually not much longer than this, like really compact longboards. But the real difference is that on a cruiser board, you ride it like a skateboard, like you would a regular skateboard. So you have a foot there and a foot there on the tail. Yeah, so you got 1 foot behind the rear trucks most of the time, because you want that leverage point. You've got to be able to bump over things and stuff on a skateboard. Even if you're not doing ollies and stuff, you're still going to ride generally there. Whereas with a longboard, you put your feet in between the two trucks. So even if your longboard's only this long, which I've ridden a couple that are, they're designed with the trucks placed so that you put your feet in between the bolts, so your back foot is between the axles. That's the big difference really. Now obviously you could ride this like a longboard if you really wanted to. Your feet are going to be really close together. It's designed with a tail so you can ride it like a regular skateboard. So why would you want a skateboard with a drop-through construction? And what is a drop-through construction? Drop-through construction is when you cut a hole in your skateboard and then you separate the base plate of your trucks from the hanger of your trucks. You put the base plate through, mount the deck on the underside of the base plate, then reattach your truck hanger, your wheels. You can do this with other types of trucks. You can do this with regular skateboard trucks and things like that to varying degrees of success. But what's the advantage? The advantage really is simply that your deck now sits quite a bit lower to the ground than it used to. It might not look like a huge difference. Basically what it means is that you've got less difference between your feet when you're pushing. It's less effort to push because you don't have to bend down so far. It also means that when you're riding and you've got both feet on the board, your centre of gravity is slightly lower. It just feels nice being a little bit lower down to the pavement sometimes. It also means that basically if you're going to fit huge wheels like these, you would notice a huge difference between riding a regular skateboard and riding a skateboard with wheels like this normally. But in actuality, it sits so much lower that the big wheel kind of problems are counteracted. So I'll show you what I mean. So you can see here the ride height of my ordinary skateboard. And if I take my conventional truck cruiser board, put it side by side, you can see it's not a huge difference, a few millimeters or so, but you notice that difference when you're riding the board, that's for sure. If you look at the leading edge of this, there is a bit of difference there. Now, if I take this one and put this side by side, yeah, they're pretty much the same height. I'd say actually this is slightly lower than this. The wheels are so much bigger. These are 72mm wheels. These are 52mm wheels. And yet both boards basically got the same deck height. So when you're riding this, it feels more like this than you might expect. Okay, so I've gone and got the longboard that I'm going to use to make this cruiser board. The first step in the process is obviously design, so I need to start by making myself a template. I'm going to use some of my other skateboards for parts of the template. So I have done one thing already, which was figure out where the truck placement is going to be on this. That's one of the big problems I had with this board when I was riding it, was the fact that the front trucks are so close to the nose. It just makes it weird kind of balance to the board, weird kind of center of gravity, weird pivot point. So what I'm going to do is I'm bringing back trucks forward slightly and the front trucks back a bit as well. This is actually going to give me a similar wheelbase to the normal skateboard that I ride at the park. It's a little bit longer than this, maybe about an inch or so, inch and a half longer than this wheelbase. Should be quite fun to ride. As to the actual placement of the nose and tail, I'm going to be trimming off this very used part of the tail. It's also pretty narrow here. And the nose is going to run to around about roughly where the back bolts are here of this. So you're going to have a bit of nose. There's going to be a few inches of nose sticking out in front of the trucks. This hopefully is going to help with the board's overall centre of gravity, pivot point, balance, whatever you want to call it. And also give you a little surface to pop off of, so that if you've done a trick and the board's the wrong way around, you can at least do a shove it and bring it back or whatever. Ideally you're going to be able to pop off of the nose. I think I've measured it at around about right, so it should give you a good angle to pop from once it's got the wheels and trucks on there. We will see in the end. So I got myself some thinnish card for the template. Unfortunately I wasn't able to find any that would be big enough to do the whole thing in one piece, but that's not the end of the world. It's to a separate nose and tail template and then stick them together. So this might actually help me partly in my process, because I haven't got a huge unwieldy piece of card to be working with. I can figure it out in pieces and then put it together, because I haven't got a fully formed idea in my mind of what this thing's going to be yet anyway. So yeah, I'm going to just work it out however. So step one, I need to put some like truck markings in, yeah? So I mentioned at the start that I'm recovering from COVID. What this means is that my brain is not fully functional yet. Now what I should have done for step one is fold this piece of card in half. I didn't do that initially, so in the first draft section I'm just completely freeballing it. So I'll get to the point where I realise I made a mistake, and then we'll be back here. All I'm going to do here is make some truck hole markings, taking extra care not to stab myself in the leg or in the hand. Cool. Right, so I've got some rough truck holes. It's good enough for now. Roughly line it up to there. So I'm going to get my ruler, I'm going to measure up from the lines I marked out, see if it matches up roughly with this, and it seems to be about right. And I'm going to measure from here out the widest point of the board, roughly. Again, this doesn't need to be precise, this is only a first draft, and I'm going to be cutting the edges in anyway. This is just to give me some rough parameters to work within. So I'm going to do the nose first. What do I want my nose to be like? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in before the front truck, a little bit like I do here. This gives you a little bit of clearance. I think it looks cool as well. I quite like this contour here that I've got on this part finished board. So I'm going to start out with that. So I've got my front truck marked out, that's there. So the question is, do I want to make it shallower or do I want to make it steeper? I think ultimately I'm going to make it a little bit steeper. I'm going to use it like this. Also, this is supposed to be a fairly unique design for this board, so I don't want to just entirely use some old templates I've got. So what I'm doing, I'm just having a look at the way that this curve forms. The line that flows when I'm drawing it is going to help to be a line that flows when I'm cutting it. Okay, so far I quite like it, and as you can see we're going to be losing a huge chunk of this board, which is going to save us a hell of a lot of weight. Now I've got to decide where I'm going with this nose. Now the original board is kind of a little bit like a modified pintail shape, so it has this pointy nose. I've used the pointy nose on loads of my cruiser boards, as you can see from all of my examples. The way I'm going to do this and give myself a nice drawing surface is I'm going to place the template in between these two skateboards, which should hopefully give me a drawing surface that matches up reasonably well. Right, let's see where that lines up to. Hey, that's not too bad. So that's not lined up too badly. As I said, this is a first draft, so the way I'm going to eventually make the template anyway is I'm going to draw one side of it. I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to cut it. And when I unfold it, hopefully that'll give me my nice finished board shape, nice and symmetrical. So this time I've folded my piece of paper before it starts, which I should have done the first time around as well. It makes life a lot easier. So the width spread centre of the bolt holes is 4 centimetres. Between the front and rear bolt holes, 5.5 centimetres between the centres of the bolt holes. I know I need at least this much length for my nose, so I'm going to do it about here, just for safety's sake. So I'm going to line it up on the 2 centimetre mark. I'm going to do one at 0, one at 4, line these two up, boom, and draw a line along the folded line. I'm going to go 5.5 centimetres along the centre line, and then from there I'm going to mark it out like so. Check my angles, seems to be about right. 5.5 seems to be about right. So here we go, there's our bolt holes. Got my rough idea of where I'm going. Okay, so here's the nose draft 2. So I'm now going to fold this back in half. I think that's pretty decent, so I'm going to cut it out. That looks very sleek. It's kind of narrower than I had initially envisaged it. Definitely too narrow, but I like the shape. So, time for template 3. So as you'll find with any creative process, you do need to have some patience to make a cruiser board that you're actually going to like, but it's really worth putting in the time. Because when you're riding to the spot and you're the one who made your board that you're riding there on, it feels good and it can help with confidence and mindset, which is all part of skateboarding. Especially maybe if you're using a board that you've landed a bunch of tricks on and you've reshaped afterwards into a new cruiser board, so you can keep enjoying that board, you can keep those memories fresh. Not everyone's got that mindset, but if you have, you might want to consider making yourself a cruiser out of one of your old boards, especially if it's one you've hung on to for a while. Right, so basic principle here. All I'm going to do, I'm going to get this, I'm just going to move it out a bit. Now how much? How much do I need to move it out? There's, like I said, patience, so you've got to think about things, right? So currently, we're running like this, or more like this, right? If we want this edge to match up with this edge, we want it to be like that. So how far is that? 1 centimetre there, 2 centimetres, I'm going with 1.5 centimetres. And I'm just going to redraw around my template. And then I'll freehand the final bit. And once again, I'm going to fold it in half, I'm going to cut it out, I'm going to see where we're at. That is a vast improvement over that. I think we might actually have something that could work. Now you might have noticed I didn't actually mark the bolt holes on this one yet. I did do that on purpose. I think that lines up quite nicely actually, shape-wise, size-wise. And now I'm going to see how it lines up to this. And I scratched the little line where I want the furthest point of my nose to be. And then I'm going to have a look and see where the trucks line up to that I marked out. Okay, so I'm going to make my 4 centimetre wide demarcation, measure 5.5, mark that. That seems about right, it seems like it's within my tolerances. So this is now officially going to be the nose. I don't have a name yet for this shape, probably mostly because I haven't finished designing the shape yet. So essentially following the same process that I did for the nose, folding my piece of paper in half at the start. So I folded my piece of paper in half, now I need to figure out how long this is going to be. So working this way also gives you the advantage of being able to lie it on there, fold it up, roughly figure out where your truck holes are going, if you are changing the truck holes at all. going to mark it out just as before. Good enough for me. So I've now got the location of my rear bolt holes, and I've got the location of the far end of my tail. And once again I'm going to turn to this board for inspiration. So I want to steal this particular element here from my previous design, although I'm using it once again at a slightly different angle from the original. Okay, cool, so this is going to have a relatively long tail for one of my cruisers, which is nice. I like that. But I need to make sure it's going to be strong enough, so you do have to think about that with your design as well. So I think actually I am going to use the tail profile from this one, at least partially. Okay, so if I was using the original bolt holes, that actually lines up really well. But if I am bringing the wheelbase in a bit, which I do want to, I've got a lot more to work with. So I think I may have made an error here in my calculations, because I appear to have lined my bolt holes up with the original bolt holes of the board. Unfortunately, I actually am changing my bolt hole placement by a good inch or two. So, yep, template 1, draft 1 for the tail, on to draft 2. I needed a pencil sharpener and I don't know where one is, so I'm using a different pencil now. Let's see how this tail has come out. It's definitely longer than the old one. Look at that. It's just within those edges there. If you line it up to the wear point, which is what I want to do. Got these coming in here. All our new trucks line up to that. It looks just lovely, to be honest with you. And I need to make the two things join up into one thing. Comes up to there. Unfortunately, my partner seems to have used the sticky tape and not put it back. So Blue Tack's going to have to do temporarily. So let's just line these up properly, shall we? If you get it right, you should have a nice straight line along the fold between two pieces of paper. And this nice straight line that you can put a ruler along is one of the ways that you're going to help line up the two ends of the board. Make sure you're not making something all wonky. And use part of the original edge of the longboard. Even if it's only a few inches, it will make my life easier. I've ended up just using that one edge of the original shape. Okay, so I should finally now be able to reveal fully for the first time the shape that this skateboard is going to be. Personally, I think it's going to be an improvement over the original design. Hopefully it will work. I think it's going to be lighter than the original one. I think it's going to be more comfortable to ride. I think the pivot point, like the centre of gravity of the board, is going to be in a better place. This is going to end up being either something I ride around on, or what the intention is actually just for this to be our sort of guest board around the house. So that if anyone comes to visit and we want to go down the beach or go out somewhere or whatever, go for a cruise on our boards, they can ride this one if they don't have a board with them themselves. And it's going to be sort of a hybrid in between being an actual longboard and also being kind of still a skateboard as well. Enough so that someone that's familiar with riding a skateboard can get on it and ride and cruise down to the beach and enjoy it, not feel uncomfortable. And likewise, someone who's just used to riding longboards can also ride this quite comfortably for a little cruise, go down the beach, bomb down a couple of hills, something like that. There should be enough room that you can ride it a bit like a longboard with your feet sort of between the wheelbase. It's not going to be drop through as well, so that means you can place your feet, right on top of the bolts. And it should be still quite comfortable to ride like that, or likewise you can put your foot behind on the tail, ride it like a skateboard, and it's not going to be too big and unwieldy for that either. So I'm trying to get something that's right in between and a nice little balance, and if it works, maybe I'll make a few more of these, who knows. That is step one, template done. That's the easy part finished.